A good year it was, even for olives, robust trees laden with fruit, which had all set earlier that spring, despite the fog that had weighed heavily on the blossoms. Don Lolo Zafara, who had a fair number of trees on Le Quote, his farm in Primasole, realizing in advance that the 5 old glazed earthenware jars he had in his cellar wouldn't be sufficient to hold all the soil from the new harvest, had ordered a sixth, larger one from Santo Stefano di Camastra, where they were made, a magnificent, big bellied jar, as high as a man's chest, that would be a mother superior to the other 5. It goes without saying that he'd quarreled with the kiln owner about the jar. Was there anyone Don Lolo didn't pick a fight with? For every little thing, even for a small stone fallen from the walls of his property, even for a piece of straw, he'd shout for his mule to be saddled so he could dash off to the city and file a complaint. And so, with all those official stamps and lawyers' fees, a lawsuit here, a lawsuit there, and all those legal expenses to pay, he'd practically ruined himself. People said that Don Lolo's lawyer, tired of seeing him appear 2 or 3 times a week, had, in order to get rid of him, given him a little book, similar to those used during Mass, the Law Code. That way Don Lolo could rack his own brains searching for the legal foundations for all the lawsuits he wanted to start. To poke fun at him, everyone with whom he quarreled used to shout, "Saddle the mule," but now, "Consult your law book." And Don Lolo, "I will, and I'll strike you down, you bastards, all of you." The new jar, which had cost him 4 ons in real money. Footnote 1. An onza is a gold coin minted in Sicily between 1732 and 1860. End of footnote 1. Was placed in the fermentation shed until room could be found for it in the cellar. No one had ever seen a jar like it before, but it made a sorry sight there in that cave, which reeked of must and the raw, pungent smell that hangs in the air in dark, close spaces. The olive harvest had begun 2 days earlier, and Don Lolo was in a rage. Between the men who'd come to beat the olive trees and the mule drivers whose mules were laden with manure to heap on the hillside for next season's bean planting, he didn't know which way to turn, whom to attend first. He was swearing like a Turk and threatening to kill now this worker, now that, if one, even one, olive were missing, as if he'd already counted each and every one of them when still on the tree, or if every pile of manure were not exactly the same size, in a ratty white hat and shirt sleeves, his chest bare, his face all red and dripping with sweat. He ran here and there, roving with wolfish eyes and furiously rubbing his cheeks, which sprouted a new beard as soon as he'd been shaved. Now, at the end of the 3rd day, 3 of the tree beaters, entering the shed to put away the ladders and sticks, stopped in their tracks at the sight of that beautiful new jar, broken in two, as if someone, slicing its big belly with a clean cut, had lopped off the whole front part. "Look, look! Who could have done it? Oh, Mamma Mia, what's Don Lolo going to say now? The new jar, what a shame." The first beater, more scared than the others, suggested they immediately close the door and leave as quietly as they could, leaning the ladders and sticks against the wall outside. But the second one said, "Are you crazy? With Don Lolo? He's likely to think we broke it ourselves. Stay right where you are." He stepped outside, cupped his hands to his mouth, and cried, "Don Lolo! Hey, Don Lolo!" There he was, at the base of the slope with the manure haulers, gesticulating furiously, as usual, and every now and then pulling his ratty white hat so low over his eyes that it would get jammed on his neck and forehead. The final shimmers of twilight were already fading from the sky, and as the evening shadows brought sweet coolness and peace to the countryside, his gestures became even more furious. "Don Lolo! Hey, Don Lolo!" When he came up and saw the damage, he nearly went mad. He hurled himself at the 3 peasants. He grabbed one by the throat, pinned him against the wall, and started screaming, "By the blood of the Madonna, you'll pay for this." When the other 2, their weathered, bestial faces distraught, grabbed him in response, he turned his fury against himself, throwing his hat to the ground, pummeling his cheeks, stomping his feet, and braying as if mourning a dead relative. The new jar, 4 ons worth of jar, brand new. He demanded to know who broke it on him. It certainly didn't break itself. Somebody must have broken it, for spite or envy. But when? And how? There was no sign of any violence. What if it had come that way from the kiln? But how could that be? It had rung like a bell. As soon as the peasants saw that his initial rage had subsided, they began urging him to calm down. The jar could be repaired. It wasn't such a bad break. Only one piece. A skilled clay mender could fix it. Good as new. Zidima Lacassi. Footnote 2. Z means uncle, and is used as a term of respect. End of footnote 2. Was just the man. He discovered some sort of miracle putty, a closely guarded secret, a glue so strong not even a hammer could break it once it had set. So if Don Lolo wanted, Zidima Lacassi would be here tomorrow, at the crack of dawn, and in less than no time the jar would be fixed, better than before. Don Lolo kept rejecting their advice. It was pointless. Nothing to be done. But in the end, he let himself be persuaded, and the next day, right at dawn, Zidima Lacassi arrived at Primasole, his basket of tools over his shoulder. He was a crooked old man, with crippled, gnarled joints, like the stump of an aged Saracen olive tree. It was like pulling teeth to get him to say a word. Surliness was rooted in his very frame, misshapen as it was, as was his misgiving that no one could truly understand or appreciate his worth as an inventor. Amateur that he was. He wanted the facts to speak for themselves. Zedima Lacassi did. He had to keep his eyes peeled to make sure no one stole his secret. "Let's see this putty of yours," was the first thing Don Lolo said, after looking him up and down for a long time. Zedima, dignified, shook his head no. "You'll see it in action." "But will it do the job?" Zedima put his basket on the ground and took out a ball of tattered red cloth, a big cotton handkerchief, which he proceeded to unfold slowly, everyone curiously looking on. When he finally produced a pair of glasses, the broken bridge and temples held together with string, they all laughed. Zedima didn't care. He sighed and cleaned his fingers before picking up his glasses and putting them on. Then, with great solemnity, he set to examining the jar, now out in the farmyard. "It'll do the job," he said. "I don't trust just your putty, though," Don Lolo stipulated. "I want wire stitches, too." "I'm going then," Zedima replied categorically, straightening up and throwing his basket of tools over his shoulder. Don Lolo caught him by the arm. "Going where? So this is how you behave with a gentleman? Would you look at him, acting like Charlemagne? You miserable pauper, you donkey's ass. I have to put oil in that jar, and oil leaks. Mend a mile-long break with nothing but putty? I want stitches. Putty and wire. I'm in charge here." Zedima closed his eyes, pursed his lips, and shook his head. They're all the same, denying him the pleasure of doing an honest job, a precision repair, and of demonstrating the quality of his putty. "If the jar doesn't ring like a bell again—" "I won't hear it," Don Lolo interrupted. "Stitches. I'm paying you for putty and stitches. How much do I owe you?" "For just the putty." "She's, you're stubborn," Don Lolo exclaimed. "What did I say? I told you I want stitches. Fine. We'll settle accounts when the job's done. I don't have time to waste arguing with you." And off he went to look after his men. Brimming with rage and spite, Zedima set to work. His rage and spite increased with every hole he drilled to thread the wire. His grunts, which accompanied the whirring of the drill, grew louder and more frequent. His face turned white with rage. His eyes narrowed with vexation. The first step finished, he hurled the drill into his basket and held the broken piece in place to make sure the holes on both pieces lined up properly and were evenly spaced. Then, with a pair of pincers, he cut enough lengths of wire for all the stitches and called for one of the beaters to help him. "Cheer up, Zedima," the peasant said, seeing how overwrought he looked. Zedima gestured angrily with his hand. He opened the tin can with the putty and, shaking it, lifted it heavenward, as if an offering to God, since men refused to acknowledge its qualities. Then, with his finger, he began to spread it all along the broken edges. He picked up his pincers and the lengths of wire and climbed into the jar's open belly, ordering the peasant to set the broken piece in place, as he had just done. Before he began stitching, he spoke from inside the jar. "Pull. Pull as hard as you can. See how it won't come off. Curses on those who don't believe it. Now bang on it. Go ahead. Bang on it. Does it ring? Yes or no? Even with me inside. Go on. Go tell your boss." "Whoever's on top is in charge," Zedima, the peasant sighed, "and who's on the bottom be damned. Come on. Put the stitches in." Zedima set to stitching up the jar, threading each length of wire through 2 adjacent holes, one on each side of the joint, and then twisting the ends with his pincers. It took an hour to do the whole thing. He was sweating like a fountain inside the jar. As he worked, he grumbled about his ill luck, and the peasant, outside the jar, consoled him. "Okay, now help me get out," Zedima finally said. But wide as it was in the belly, the jar was narrow in the neck. In his rage, Zedima hadn't noticed. Now, try as he might, he couldn't fit through the opening, and the peasant, instead of helping him, doubled up with laughter. Zedima was imprisoned in there, trapped inside the jar he himself had fixed, and that now, in order to get him out, it was the only way. Would have to be broken again, this time for good. Amid shouts and laughter, Don Lolo arrived. Zedima was like a ferocious cat inside the jar. "Get me out of here," he was screaming. "God damn it, I want out. Now, help me." Don Lolo was stunned. He simply couldn't believe it. What? Inside? He sealed himself inside. He went up to the jar and yelled to old Zedima. "Help. What kind of help can I give you, you dumb old fool? What have you done? Didn't you measure it first? Come on, try and get out. One arm first, like that, then your head. Come on. No, easy. Oh, go back. Wait, not like that. Lower, lower. How in the world? And now, what about my jar? Calm down, he advised everyone, as if they were the ones about to lose their calm, not him. My head is spinning. Keep calm. This is a new case. My mule." He tapped the jar with his knuckles. It really did ring like a bell. "Nice, like new. You just wait," he said to Zedima, imprisoned inside. "Go saddle my mule." He ordered the peasant, and, scratching his forehead, mumbled to himself, "Well, just look what has happened to me. This isn't a jar. It's a tool of the devil. Stop that right now." And he ran over to steady the jar, in which Zedima was thrashing about like a caged animal. "A new case, my friend. I need my lawyer to resolve it. I don't feel up to handling it myself. My mule. I'll go and come straight back. Just be patient. It's in your best interest. And meanwhile, keep calm in there. Easy. I have to look after my own interests, first and foremost. I'll do what it takes to defend my rights, but here, I'll pay you, for a whole day's work. 5 lira. Is that enough? I don't want your money, Zedima yelled. I want out. You'll get out, but in the meantime, I'm going to pay you. Here, 5 lira. He pulled the money out of his waistcoat and tossed it in the jar. Then, in a thoughtful voice, have you had your breakfast? Bread and drippings. Right away. You don't want it? Throw it to the hogs then. All I care is that I gave you some food. He ordered Zedima to be fed, then mounted his mule and galloped off to the city. From his peculiar, ceaseless gesticulating, all who saw him thought he was on his way to join the madhouse. Fortunately, he didn't have to wait long to see his lawyer, but he did have to wait a good while for the man to stop laughing once Don Lolo explained the situation. All that laughter annoyed him. Excuse me, but what's so funny? You're not the one who's been swindled. That jar is mine. But his lawyer kept on laughing and wanted Don Lolo to tell him the story again, how it had all happened, so he could laugh all over again. Inside, hey? He sealed himself inside? And what was it that Don Lolo was proposing? To keep him inside there. Ha ha ha. Ho ho ho. To keep him inside, so as not to ruin his jar? What, I'm supposed to ruin it? Don Lolo asked, with clenched fists, adding insult to injury. Do you realize what this is called? The lawyer finally said to him. It's called kidnapping. Kidnapping? Who kidnapped him? Don Lolo exclaimed. He kidnapped himself. Why am I to blame? So the lawyer explained that there were two legal matters here. On the one hand, he, Don Lolo, must immediately free the prisoner so as not to be accused of kidnapping. On the other, the claimant had to account for the damage he'd caused as a result of his carelessness or stupidity. Ah, Don Lolo sighed with relief. By paying me for the jar. Not so fast, the lawyer observed. Not as if it were new, mind you. Why not? Because it was broken, obviously. Broken? No, sir. It's fixed now, like new. Better than new. He even says so himself. And if I broke it again now, it could never be made whole again. The jar would be a loss. The lawyer assured him that this would be taken into consideration by making Zedima pay what the jar was worth in its present state. In fact, he advised, have him estimate the price himself. I kiss your hands, Don Lolo said as he rushed out. When he got back, around evening, he found all the peasants making merry around the inhabited jar. Even the watchdog had joined in the festivities, jumping and barking. Zedima had not only calmed down, but even come to enjoy his bizarre adventure, laughing about it with the awkward gaiety of sad folk. Don Lolo shoved everyone aside and peered into the jar. So, comfy in there? Very comfy. It's nice and cool in here. Better than in my own home. Wonderful. Meanwhile, let me warn you that this jar cost me 4 onza, new. How much do you think it's worth now? With me inside? Zedima asked. The workers all laughed. Silence, Don Lolo shouted. It's one or the other. Either your putty works, or it doesn't. If it doesn't, you're a cheat. If it does, then the jar's worth something. How much, though? You tell me. Zedima thought for a moment, then said, Here's what I say. If you'd let me repair it with just my putty, like I'd wanted to, I wouldn't have ended up inside here in the first place, and the jar would have been worth more or less the same as before. But now, with these ridiculous stitches, which I could only do from inside, how much could it possibly be worth? A third of the original price, more or less. A third? Don Lolo asked. 1 onza, and 33? Even less, maybe, but not more. Well then, said Don Lolo, I'll take your word for it. Give me 1 onza, and 33. What? Zedima asked, as if not understanding. I have to break the jar to let you out, Don Lolo replied, and my lawyer says you have to pay me what you estimated it to be worth. 1 onza, and 33. Me? Pay? Zedima laughed scornfully. You must be joking. I'm going to rot in here. And, with a bit of effort, he took his crusty little pipe from his pocket, lit it, and started puffing on it, blowing the smoke out the neck of the jar. Don Lolo was piqued. Neither he nor his lawyer had anticipated this new situation, that Zedima would not want to get out of the jar. Now what? He was on the verge of ordering, my mule, again, but realized it was evening already. Oh, really? So you want to live inside my jar? You're all my witnesses. He doesn't want to come out, so as not to pay for the jar. But I'm ready to break it. Well, since he wants to stay in there, I'm going to sue him tomorrow for squatting and for preventing me from using the jar. Zedima sent up another puff of smoke and then replied calmly, No, sir, I have no intention of preventing you from anything. Do you think I'm here for my own entertainment? Let me out, and I'll gladly evacuate. But pay. You've got to be joking, sir. Don Lolo, in a fit of rage, raised his leg and was about to kick the jar, but then thought better of it. Instead, he grabbed it with 2 hands and, trembling all over, shook it hard. See how good my putty is? Zedima asked. You crook, you, Don Lolo roared. Who created this mess? You or me? And now, I'm supposed to pay? You can starve to death in there. We'll see who wins. And he stormed off, forgetting about the 5 lira he'd tossed in the jar that morning. For starters, Zedima decided to use the money to celebrate with the peasants, who, having stayed on because of this strange story, were going to spend the night there, sleeping out in the open in the farmyard. One of them went to buy some things from a nearby tavern. The moon, as if on purpose, was so bright that evening it seemed like daytime. At a certain point, Don Lolo was awakened by a hellish din. He looked out his balcony onto the farmyard and saw a host of devils dancing in the moonlight. The drunken peasants who, hand in hand, were prancing around the jar, and Zedima, inside, singing at the top of his lungs. Don Lolo couldn't take it anymore. He rushed out like a mad bull and, before anyone could stop him, sent the jar rolling down the hillside with a shove. Accompanied by the peasants' drunken laughter, the jar rolled right into an olive tree and shattered. Zedima won.